MTN 10 o'clock news.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. Montana's COVID-19 cases continue to trend in the wrong direction. Those numbers skyrocketing as a third booster shot is on the horizon. And the Billings school superintendent calls on the Billings Education Association to implement a mask mandate for staff. Now, with students in School District 2 getting ready to head back to school in less than a week, there's one key issue on many people's minds as COVID-19 cases continue to climb. That question whether schools will require masks. This morning, Billings School Superintendent Greg Upham approached the Billings Education Association president, wanting to implement a mask mandate for all staff at the K-8 level. The Education Association has denied that request, opting to stick with the current agreement that makes masking optional for employees. Despite masks remaining optional, the board does highly encourage members to wear a mask, especially around students who are unable to receive the vaccine. They do say they will monitor cases closely and be willing to revisit the decision as the year progresses. Well, no decision has been made on whether students will be required to wear masks yet. We did reach out to Superintendent Upham but have not heard back. He is scheduled to answer questions about the start of the school year live on the Billings Public Schools Facebook page. That'll take place at 12:30 tomorrow afternoon. Well, today the University of Montana gave its answer, recommending all students and employees to wear masks indoors regardless of vaccination status, but it's not a mandate. Campus officials say this was a collective call in order to prevent the spread on campus at the start of the new year. The policy will be revisited in a month on September 20th. Montana State University issued a very similar policy yesterday, and that will remain in place until October 1st. Well, COVID cases have been rising rapidly once again in the state and here in Yellowstone County. The state reported 436 new cases today. Yellowstone County saw 58 of those, bringing the county's active case mark to nearly 500 now. According to Riverstone Health, Yellowstone County has seen right around 800 new cases in August so far. For comparison, only 451 cases were reported in the entire month of July. The county also reported one more death today, a woman in her 40s who had not been vaccinated and had no known underlying health conditions. 56 patients are in Billings hospitals right now. More than 200 people are hospitalized around the state. Well, with new evidence that vaccines lose effectiveness over time and with the Delta variant raging, the Biden administration is recommending COVID-19 booster shots for Americans 18 and older. Deborah Alfarone has more on that.
As COVID-19 surges this summer, President Biden unveiled his administration's plans to provide booster shots for Americans 8 months after they're fully vaccinated. The strategy comes from data showing the vaccines become less effective over time.
This will boost your immune response. It will increase your protection from COVID-19. And it's the best way to protect ourselves from new variants that could arise.
3 studies published by the CDC Wednesday showed the vaccine's protection against infection decreased when the Delta variant began circulating. The booster plan includes Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. Health officials say Johnson & Johnson's single-dose shot will also likely need a booster, but they're waiting for more data.
I would doubt if we're going to need many boosters when we try to find out the breadth and the depth of the response by a booster. It is really extraordinary. It goes up by multiple fold, at least 20 to 30 fold. So we don't anticipate that beyond this we're going to need anything else.
In his remarks from the White House, the president took aim at governors from several states, including Florida and Texas, who have made efforts to ban mask mandates in schools.
We're not going to sit by as governors try to block and intimidate educators protecting our children.
The president also said his administration is ordering nursing homes to get their staffs vaccinated or risk losing Medicare or Medicaid funding. Deborah Alfarone, CBS News, Washington.
Now, President Biden says the first boosters are expected to be available the week of September 20th. The plan needs approval from a CDC advisory panel and the FDA. And going along with the call from the Biden administration, the Yellowstone County Department of Health and Human Services also recommends a third dose of the vaccine. Q2's David Jay has more from the Yellowstone County Health Officer.
The recommendation is to take a third shot for those who have received the Pfizer or Moderna COVID-19 vaccine.
You're certainly more protected after the second dose, and it's about 95%. But what appears to be happening is over time that immunity wanes a little bit, which is why the third dose is now being recommended for 8 months out. It's just another dose. It's really a third dose of the same thing. Ideally, what people do is if they got their first 2 doses were Pfizer, we want them to get a Pfizer third dose. If the first 2 doses were Moderna, we want them to get a Moderna. The Johnson & Johnson is at this point a 1-dose vaccine, and there hasn't been a recommendation come out for what to do with boosters of that.
At this time, only those with compromised immune systems can take the third dose. And for everyone, there is a little bit of a time frame they have to keep in mind before they get that third dose.
There's kind of 2 sets of booster decisions that have been made. One is for people who are immune compromised, that they should get a third dose of either the Pfizer or the Moderna at least 28 days after their second dose. The second one that came out is a more general third dose booster for those same 2 products, and that is recommended 8 months after the second dose. So that will really start around the 20th of September.
Yellowstone County Health Officer John Felton says about 95% have come back for the booster shots, and he expects that will be the same for the third shot.
There's pretty good protection that's conferred by that first dose. It gets better with the second dose, and then the third dose we believe will maintain that protection for a longer period. The studies will be ongoing with that initial population so that we can really see over time what happens to the immunity level.
In Billings, David J., MTN News.
Thanks, David. Here in Yellowstone County, Riverstone Health has 2 more free vaccination clinics scheduled for the rest of August. The first is this Friday, August 20th, at Riverstone Health's Lil Anderson Center. That will run from 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. The final clinic this month is slated for Monday, August 30th. That's also from 11 to 1. More clinics are scheduled in September, and that information is on our story online on ktvq.com. 62 years ago this week, a powerful earthquake shook parts of Montana, forever changing the landscape in Yellowstone Park. Tonight, we're taking a look back at that historic event through the eyes of one of the first reporters to arrive on the scene.
Vic Miller covered a lot of big stories in his more than half-century in broadcasting as a reporter, anchor, and eventually the general manager of KTVQ, but none bigger than back in 1959 when KTVQ was known as Cook TV and Radio.
And I had my chair backed up against the wall and it started to rattle. And he said, "My God, what's that?" And I said, "It's an earthquake," because I had him before. So then we go down to the wire machine and try to find out where it was, or where the epicenter was, and they finally discovered it was by Hebgen Lake.
The next day, Miller was on a chartered plane to the airport in West Yellowstone to cover the earthquake.
It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. And we flew over areas where the highway had dropped 10 feet. It was crazy.
He would get some of the very first interviews with survivors.
And boy, some of the stories they had. One couple we talked to were in a tent, and he had a flashlight, and he showed it outside. He said a boulder the size of a Volkswagen rolled past, but it missed our tent. Another couple, the water kept rising. They kept crawling up a tree further and further, and there were a couple probably in their 60s. But they survived.
Those were the lucky ones. At the time, Miller didn't know how many had perished.
It ended up with 28, and of course 19 are still up there, and will be forever.
And 62 years later, it's a story that he's never forgotten.
And you'd wake up at night thinking about it for a while, because it was such an awesome thing, and just talking to survivors, and they were terrified even the day after. And the quake was over, and they were still terrified. And you even had college kids from the park who happened to be up there camping. And when you're a college kid, you're not afraid of anything. And they were terrified. They could not wait to get out of there. It was, of course, the biggest story I ever covered on radio.
All right, time for a first look at the weather with Ed McIntosh. We got some rain today, but it was kind of a case of the haves and the have-nots.
That's right, yeah, and mainly it was from Billings towards the west where we had the haves. Here's some of the rain totals that we got. 98/100ths of an inch in Livingston, more than double the old record for the date. 58/100ths here in Billings, and you can see a mix all the way down to just a few 100ths through portions of northern Wyoming. But once we get into the eastern plains, really didn't have anything to show for today. Here's how it looks on Doppler radar this evening. We're continuing to watch some showers move up from Wyoming, and that's going to be the big weather maker tonight heading into tomorrow. Estimated radar shows where we'll have areas of showers continuing overnight and into tomorrow, and by tomorrow night, some heavier rain is possible. A lot more weather to talk about. That's all coming up a few minutes from now.
The Rocky Mountain Tribal Leaders Council is holding a 3-day conference in Billings to talk about tribal public health. Q2's Brandon Warren has more on that.
Members of several tribes from across the state are attending a Billings conference to discuss a new era in tribal public health.
They're sharing science, they're sharing language, they're sharing songs, they're sharing culture on the tribal public health to COVID-19, as well as diabetes, suicide, homicide, and those kinds of, we call them disparities.
The conference features guest speakers from all walks of life, including elders, doctors, nurses, and scientists. These speakers give insight in their respective fields and give information on how to live a healthier life.
It's important because of the mental health. Because we've been in a pandemic for 16 months, and the level of anxieties, the level of stress, the level of healing that needs to happen. And that's what's happening today, is the healing.
Theta mentioned that the audience was so engaged in some presentations that they lost track of time and nearly forgot to go to lunch. The main goal of the conference is to inspire those who attend.
We believe that Montana is a state that is in transition in a good way, where there's really good acceptance and alliances built between all the humans here, no matter what their color is. We believe that we can heal from some of the isms of racism, sexism, ageism, and that it's a good place to live, and I think people are ready to do that.
The conference also discussed COVID-19 and how some tribes will deal with it going forward. In Billings, Brandon Warren, MTN News.
Thank you, Brandon. The last day of that conference will be tomorrow. Yellowstone Valley Animal Shelter joining a nationwide push to help homeless pets find forever homes. In partnership with the Bissell Pet Foundation, Yellowstone County Animal Shelter is holding an Empty the Shelter event, which runs through Sunday, August 22nd. The primary focus is to help stray cats find new homes. Shelter's joining the push because it too has experienced an increase in the number of cats they've taken in this summer.
Now through Sunday, this 22nd, we are doing $10 adult cat adoptions. So for $10, you can get an adult cat. They're spayed, neutered, vaccinated, and microchipped. So if you've been thinking about getting a new cat to add to your home, it's the perfect time. We have literally every color, personality, everything you want.
And they've taken in some 400 cats this summer. Still to come on the MTN 10 o'clock news here on Q2, the statewide drought forcing Montana ranchers into some tough decisions. We'll tell you more about that coming up in tonight's Montana Ag Report.